Welcome. I am Melesias. Today, we are not stepping into a drawing room or a cathedral. We are stepping into a mirror. A mirror that reflects not our faces, but our souls. A mirror that asks a question so unsettling, so profound, and so eternally human that it has haunted readers for over a century. What would you look like, if the portrait of your life showed the truth? What would happen to your face, if every sin, every cruelty, every secret act of cowardice and selfishness, left its mark for the world to see? We are about to open one of the most brilliant, decadent, and deeply moral fables ever written, The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Before the story, there was the man. And the man was, in many ways, his own greatest work of art. Oscar Wilde was not just a writer, he was a performance, a walking paradox, a man who believed that the highest duty was to be beautiful and that the only way to live was to live intensely. He was the undisputed king of the London literary scene, a brilliant conversationalist who could hold a dinner party spellbound with a single, perfectly crafted anecdote. He dressed in velvet and silk, wore a green carnation in his buttonhole, and carried a sunflower as he strolled down Piccadilly. He was famous for being famous, a celebrity before the age of celebrities. His wit was legendary, his paradoxes were quoted in every drawing room, and his very presence seemed to make the world a little brighter, a little more artificial, and a little more dangerous. But beneath the glittering surface, a different story was waiting to be told. In 1890, Wilde published his only novel in a magazine, a story so scandalous and so morally ambiguous that it was attacked as unclean, poisonous, and a dangerous experiment. The story was about a young man of extraordinary beauty who sells his soul for eternal youth, while a hidden portrait bears the burden of his age and his sins. The critics were horrified, but the public was captivated. Wilde, with his characteristic flair, expanded the story, adding layers of complexity, a preface of brilliant aphorisms that served as a manifesto for the aesthetic movement, and a darker, more tragic undercurrent. The full novel was published in 1891, and it sealed Wilde's reputation as a genius and a provocateur. The tragedy of Dorian Gray is not just contained within its pages. It echoes, with a chilling precision, in the life of the man who wrote it. Wilde, like his creation, was a man of immense charm and brilliance who seemed to float above the ordinary rules of society. He lived a life of aesthetic pleasure and intellectual freedom, believing he could defy the conventions of his age. But the Victorian world was not as forgiving as art. At the very peak of his fame, Wilde was brought down by a scandal. His relationship with a young aristocrat, Lord Alfred Douglas, was exposed, and Wilde was arrested, tried, and convicted of gross indecency. The man who had been celebrated as the Prince of Paradoxes became a prisoner. The artist who had preached the gospel of beauty was sentenced to 2 years of hard labor in Reading jail. He emerged a broken man, his health destroyed, his reputation ruined, and he died in exile in Paris, penniless and alone, at the age of 46. His life, like Dorian's portrait, became a devastating testament to the price of living without consequences. But the book survived. It survived the scandal, it survived the critics, and it survived the tragic death of its creator. It survived because it is not just a cautionary tale. It is a profound psychological thriller, a Gothic horror story, and a heartbreaking exploration of what it means to be human. It is a book that knows the terrible, seductive power of beauty, and the crushing weight of a conscience that cannot be silenced. So, let us now step into the sunlit studio of an artist named Basil Hallward. A canvas stands on an easel, and on it, the face of a young man is taking shape, a face of such extraordinary beauty that it will inspire a wish so terrible, and a fate so dark, that the world has never been able to look away. Let us begin the story of Dorian Gray. The story begins not in a Gothic castle or a haunted forest, but in a place of light, beauty, and intoxicating fragrance. It is a summer's day in the London studio of Basil Hallward, a successful painter. The room is filled with the scent of roses, the soft hum of bees, and the rich, warm light that filters through silk curtains. Everything is designed for beauty, for the quiet worship of art. And it is here, in this sanctuary of aestheticism, that we are introduced not to a monster, but to an angel. A young man of such breathtaking, almost supernatural, physical perfection that he seems to belong to another world. His name is Dorian Gray. Basil is not just painting a portrait. He is confessing. He tells his friend, the cynical and utterly captivating Lord Henry Wotton, that he has poured too much of himself into this canvas. He is afraid it reveals the secret of his own soul, his idolatry of this young man's beauty. Lord Henry, lounging with a cigarette, is intrigued. He insists on meeting the boy, despite Basil's desperate protests. Basil, we learn, has met Dorian at a moment of profound artistic crisis, and the boy's beauty has been a revelation to him. He is terrified that Lord Henry, with his seductive, poisonous wit, will corrupt this perfect, innocent soul. He says a line that will haunt the entire story: he has a simple and a beautiful nature. Don't spoil him. Don't try to influence him. Your influence would be bad. The warning, of course, is in vain. Lord Henry meets Dorian, and the boy is immediately fascinated. They wander into the garden, where the scent of lilac is heavy and intoxicating. And it is here, in this lush, perfumed setting, that Lord Henry begins to weave his spell. He does not shout or command. He whispers. He speaks of the supreme importance of youth and beauty, of the tragedy of their inevitable fading. He tells Dorian that he possesses a marvelous gift that will last only for a few years. He says, with a casual, devastating certainty, the moment you cease to be young, you cease to be alive. The words fall on the young man's ears like a poison that tastes of honey. For the first time in his life, Dorian becomes conscious of his own beauty and terrified of its loss. They return to the studio, and Dorian sees the finished portrait. The sight of his own beauty, captured so perfectly on canvas, overwhelms him. But it is not joy he feels. It is a piercing, agonizing pain. He realizes, with a sudden, terrible clarity, that the portrait will remain young and beautiful forever, while he will grow old, wrinkled, and grotesque. Lord Henry's cruel prophecy echoes in his mind. In a moment of pure, anguished narcissism, Dorian cries out a wish, a prayer, a curse. He says he would give his soul if only the picture could bear the burden of age and sin, and he could remain forever as he is now. The words are not shouted. They are a quiet, desperate, and utterly sincere bargain with an unseen force. And somewhere, in the quiet folds of reality, the bargain is heard. The portrait is finished. Basil, horrified by the intensity of the moment and by Dorian's reaction, tries to destroy the canvas, fearing it reveals too much of his own secret soul. But Dorian stops him, declaring he is in love with the portrait and will not allow it to be harmed. The painting is eventually sent to Dorian's home, wrapped in a cloth, a secret to be kept. Lord Henry, intrigued by the young man he is so skillfully corrupting, decides to take him under his wing. He will educate him in the new hedonism, a life devoted to the pursuit of beauty and sensation. And as the two men leave the studio together, a quiet, terrible seed has been planted. A wish has been made, and the world, though it does not know it yet, has begun to tilt on its axis. The months that followed were a fevered dream of sensation. Under the tutelage of Lord Henry, Dorian Gray was initiated into a world of exquisite pleasures, of rare books and intoxicating perfumes, of beautiful things that existed only to be admired and consumed. He became a living work of art, the perfect embodiment of the philosophy Lord Henry preached but never dared to fully live. And yet, even in this intoxicating orbit, Dorian was capable of something that Lord Henry was not. He was capable of falling in love. Or so he believed. The object of his affection was not a duchess or an heiress, but a young, impoverished actress named Sybil Vane, who performed Shakespeare in a squalid, gaslit theatre on the wrong side of the Thames. She was not real to him. She was Juliet, Rosalind, Ophelia. He loved her not for who she was, but for the roles she played, for the art she embodied. He loved a beautiful illusion. Dorian announced, with breathless excitement, that he was engaged to be married. He took Lord Henry and Basil to see her perform, to witness the miracle of his golden girl. But that night, the miracle did not happen. Sybil was wooden, listless, utterly devoid of the fire that had captivated him. She performed like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Dorian was mortified, his aesthetic sensibilities wounded, his pride shattered before his two mentors. After the humiliating performance, he went backstage, his heart a cold, hard stone. Sybil, unaware of his fury, greeted him with a radiant, almost ecstatic joy. She explained, with a touching, tragic clarity, what had happened. Before she met him, she told him, acting was her only reality. But now, she knew what real love was. The painted scenery, the false words, the artificial emotions, they all seemed hollow and meaningless. "You have made me understand what love really is," she said, her eyes shining. "My love. My Prince Charming." Dorian looked at her, and all the passion he thought he felt curdled into a bitter, contemptuous disgust. He saw not a girl in love, but a failed artist. A broken instrument. Without her art, she was nothing to him. He said, with a voice that was chillingly calm and utterly devoid of pity, "You have killed my love." He told her she was shallow and stupid, that she had thrown away his devotion. He left her there, sobbing on the floor, and walked out into the night, his heart a perfect, unbroken fortress of selfishness. The cruelty was not an act of passion. It was cold, deliberate, and absolute. He did not lose his temper. He simply withdrew his love, as a god might withdraw his favor from an unworthy worshipper. It was, in its own way, far more terrifying than violence. He returned home, and as he passed by the shrouded portrait in his library, something drew his eye. He looked. And the face in the portrait was different. There was no dramatic transformation, no horns, no fangs. It was something far more subtle and far more terrifying. A faint, almost imperceptible touch of cruelty had appeared around the sculpted mouth. The expression, which had once been one of pure, angelic innocence, was now just slightly harder, just slightly colder. The change was tiny, but it was unmistakable. A cold dread seized him, followed by a wave of sickening guilt. He remembered the wish he had made in Basil's studio. Could it be? Was the portrait bearing the burden of his sin? He saw, for the first time, the true horror of his bargain. The face in the painting was the mirror of his soul. And his soul had just committed its first murder. The next morning, Lord Henry arrived with the news. Sybil Vane was dead. She had taken her own life that very night, swallowing something from the theatre's dressing room. Lord Henry, with his characteristic detachment, saw it as a tragic but beautiful ending to a romantic story. Dorian, he counseled, must not let this destroy him. He must think of it as a strange, almost perfect artistic climax. The girl had paid the ultimate price for love. It was beautiful, he said. Dorian, torn between the genuine horror of what he had caused and Lord Henry's seductive, immoral reasoning, chose to believe the latter. He would not mourn. He would not suffer. He would let the portrait do that for him. He made a decision, then and there, that would seal his fate. He would pursue a life of eternal youth, eternal pleasure, and eternal beauty. And the portrait, hidden away in the dark, would bear the weight of his shame. The first stain of cruelty had dried. The long, slow descent into the abyss had begun. The years passed. The tragedy of Sybil Vane, which had momentarily shaken Dorian's conscience, faded into the background of his life, a single dark note in a symphony of pleasures. Lord Henry had sent him a book. It was a French novel, a study in decadence, bound in yellow paper. It told the story of a young Parisian who devoted his life to the pursuit of every passion, every sensation, and every forbidden desire. The book had no plot, no moral, no argument. It was simply a catalogue of exquisite experiences, written in a style that was intoxicating, poisonous, and utterly captivating. For Dorian, it became a kind of scripture. He read it until he could recite entire passages. He lived his life by its unspoken doctrine, that the only sin is the denial of experience, and that the highest purpose of existence is to burn with a hard, gem-like flame. And so, Dorian Gray disappeared into a double life. Outwardly, he remained the perfect gentleman. He was welcomed in the highest society. His beauty was undimmed. His charm was legendary. He was a patron of the arts, a model of style, a figure of flawless grace. But this was the mask. Behind the closed doors of his magnificent townhouse, in the locked, dusty schoolroom at the top of the stairs, the real Dorian Gray was rotting. The portrait, hidden under a purple, gold-embroidered pall, was changing. It was no longer just a hint of cruelty around the mouth. The face was becoming monstrous, coarsened by the sins of a life lived without conscience. He would sometimes stand before it, comparing the hideous, aging, corrupt face on the canvas with the perfect, youthful face that smiled back at him from the mirror. And the contrast would send a thrill of pure, ecstatic terror through his soul. Rumors began to swirl around him like a dark fog. Men whispered in their clubs. Women averted their eyes. Stories were told of ruined reputations, of young men who had been seen in his company and were never the same, of friendships that had soured into something mysterious and shameful. No one could say exactly what he had done. The evidence was always circumstantial, always just out of reach. But the feeling was undeniable. A chill followed him into rooms. He was a beautiful, poisonous flower, and the air around him was thick with the scent of decay. He had become a pariah to some, an object of dark fascination to others. The boy who had wished for eternal youth was now a prisoner of his own legend, trapped in a world of whispers and shadows. One evening, the ghost of the past came knocking. Basil Hallward, the artist who had painted the fatal portrait, visited Dorian before leaving for Paris. He was no longer the young, passionate painter. He was older, wearier, his face etched with concern. He had come as a friend, he said, to confront Dorian about the terrible rumors that were destroying his reputation. He wanted to know if Dorian was as black as his soul was painted. Dorian, with a cold, unnerving laugh, told him he could see for himself. He took a lamp and led Basil up the long, dark staircase to the schoolroom. The air was thick with dust. The floorboards creaked. And Dorian, with a theatrical gesture, tore the purple cloth from the painting. Basil screamed. He saw, In the flickering lamplight, the face of his own masterpiece transformed into a vision of pure, undiluted evil. It was a face he recognized, and yet it was the face of a devil. Basil, in his shock and horror, immediately pleaded with Dorian to repent, to pray, to try and undo the evil that had been done. "It is never too late, Dorian," he begged. "Let us kneel down and try if we cannot remember a prayer." But the sight of Basil's pathetic, kneeling form, and the sound of his desperate, conventional piety, ignited a savage, uncontrollable fury in Dorian. A mad, unreasoning hatred seized him. He saw the artist not as a friend, but as the creator of his torment, the man who was responsible for this cursed object, this visible conscience. He picked up a knife that lay on a chest. And then, he plunged it into the painter's neck, again and again and again. The art that had given life to the portrait had now, in a final, terrible act, taken a life in return. Basil Hallward, the man who had worshipped beauty, was destroyed by the monster his own creation had become. The body of Basil Hallward lay in the dark, silent schoolroom, a spreading pool of crimson soaking into the dusty floorboards. And Dorian Gray, the man who had committed this unspeakable act, was not paralyzed by horror. He was cold, calculating, and terrifyingly calm. He looked at the body, not as the corpse of his friend, but as a problem to be solved. The evidence had to disappear. He had once been a gentleman. Now, he was a predator, a creature of the night who knew how to survive. He remembered a man, a former friend, a brilliant chemist named Alan Campbell, whose career had been destroyed by a single, devastating scandal. Dorian knew the secret. And he knew he could use it. The next morning, in the cold, clear light of day, he summoned Campbell to his house and, with a chilling, unspoken threat of exposure, blackmailed him into destroying the body with acid and fire. The bond of secrecy was complete. The portrait had claimed another soul, and Dorian's hands, though they looked clean, were now drenched in an invisible, ineradicable blood. The body was gone, dissolved into a handful of ash. But the memory was not. And neither was the portrait. It was now, he knew, the only tangible proof of his guilt. He would hide it, he decided, in the very room where the murder had taken place. He would seal the schoolroom forever. A strange, twisted form of paranoia began to consume him. The beautiful, perfect mask he showed to the world was becoming a cage. He could trust no one. He could confide in no one. He was utterly, profoundly alone, a prisoner in a gilded palace of his own making. The city that had once worshipped him now felt like a hunting ground, and he was no longer sure if he was the hunter or the prey. He craved oblivion, a way to escape the crushing weight of his own conscience. He sought refuge in the opium dens of London's darkest docklands, hoping, perhaps, to find a drug that could silence not just his memories, but his very soul. In that hazy, subterranean world of smoke and shadow, a ghost from the past finally caught up with him. He was recognized by a drunken woman, who called him Prince Charming. And in the corner of the foul den, a gaunt, rough-faced sailor heard the name. It was James Vane, Sybil's brother, who had spent 18 years searching the world for the man who had destroyed his sister. He had sworn a vow of revenge, and now, at last, he had found his prey. He confronted Dorian, dragging him into a dark alley, a pistol pressed to his temple. But Dorian, with a flash of desperate cunning, played his final, most brilliant trick. He stepped into a pool of harsh, white light, revealing his youthful, unmarked face. He asked James how old he thought he was. The sailor, looking at the face of a man in his early 20s, was consumed by doubt. He let Dorian go, convinced he had made a terrible mistake. The man who had ruined Sybil's life could not possibly be this young. He had let the devil go free, not knowing that Dorian's very youth was the proof of his guilt. Dorian had escaped, but the terror of that moment had shattered his nerves. The fear of death, raw and immediate, had burrowed into his soul. He retreated to his country estate, seeking peace in the quiet English countryside. But fate, it seemed, was not finished with him. During a shooting party, a man was accidentally killed. And when the body was dragged from the undergrowth, Dorian saw the face of James Vane. The sailor had followed him, and the forces of chance, or perhaps something more judgmental, had struck him down. Dorian was saved, not by his own cunning, but by pure, dumb luck. He felt a wave of hysterical relief. He was safe. The last witness was dead. He would live. He convinced himself that this was a sign, that he could be good, that he could change. He returned to London, determined to turn over a new leaf. He would be good. He would atone for his sins. He told Lord Henry of his resolution, but the old cynic simply laughed, dismissing the idea as a naive fantasy. Dorian then performed what he believed was his first truly selfless act. He could have ruined a young village girl, Hetty, but he chose to spare her. He left her, believing he had made a great moral sacrifice. Full of a new, sanctimonious hope, he rushed back to the schoolroom, eager to see if his good deed had erased the marks of sin from the portrait. He tore away the cloth. And a wave of pure, cold nausea washed over him. The portrait was not better. It was worse. The face was even more hideous, more cunning, more hypocritical. In the eyes, there was now the unmistakable glint of a liar. His good deed had not been born of genuine compassion, but of vanity, a desire to see his own moral reflection improve. The portrait, that infallible mirror, had seen through him. It knew the truth. He could not escape himself. A rage, a madness, a desperate, final fury seized him. The portrait was the cause of everything. It was his judge, his jury, and his executioner. It was the visible conscience he could never silence. He saw the knife, the very same knife with which he had murdered Basil Hallward, still lying on a chest. It was as if fate was placing the instrument of his final act directly into his hand. He would kill the past. He would destroy the painting, and with it, all the evidence of his sins. He would be free. With a scream that was both a sob of despair and a cry of pure hatred, he seized the knife and plunged it into the heart of the portrait. A terrible, piercing cry echoed through the silent house. It was a sound of such agony that it woke the servants and stopped the blood in their veins. When they finally broke down the locked door of the schoolroom, they found a sight that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. On the floor, in front of the easel, lay the body of a dead man. He was dressed in the evening clothes of their master. But his face was a hideous, wrinkled, bloated mask of a man who had lived a century of debauchery. He was unrecognizable. It was only by the rings on his fingers that they could tell it was Dorian Gray. And on the wall above him, in a perfect, gilt frame, was the most beautiful portrait they had ever seen. It showed their master exactly as they had last seen him, in all the exquisite, unmarred glory of his youth. The picture of Dorian Gray had been restored. The price had been paid. The soul and the body had, at last, been reunited. And so, the story of Dorian Gray ends not with a bang, but with a terrible, silent tableau. The beautiful boy who wished to remain forever young got his wish, and it destroyed him. Oscar Wilde, the master of paradox, left us not with a simple moral, but with a question that continues to burn in the dark corners of our own minds. What would happen to us, if the portrait of our life showed the truth? If every unkind thought, every act of cowardice, every selfish desire, every secret cruelty, left its visible mark on our face? How many of us would dare to look at such a portrait? How many of us would lock it away in the attic, and how many would, like Dorian, grow to hate it with a murderous rage? The story is a Gothic fable, but its horror is deeply, profoundly real. It tells us that we cannot escape the consequences of who we are. Art is not separate from morality. Beauty is not a substitute for goodness. And the soul, no matter how deeply we try to bury it, will always, in the end, have the final word. I am Melesias. This has been the story of the Picture of Dorian Gray, as I have understood it. Thank you for listening. If this dark journey through beauty and decay has moved you, please subscribe. And remember, the most important portrait you will ever look at is the one that stares back at you from the mirror of your own conscience. Until next time.